The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March of 1878, and Benjamin Wallace knew before he even broke the wax seal that his carefully constructed life was about to change forever. He stood on the porch of his ranch house outside Laredo, Texas, watching dust devils dance across the horizon as his calloused fingers traced the elegant handwriting that spelled out his name. 3 months ago, he had placed an advertisement in a Boston newspaper, seeking a wife to share his life on the frontier. The responses had been few, but one had stood out among them all. Hannah Dawson had written with intelligence and grace, describing a life back east that held nothing for her anymore, a willingness to start fresh in a land she had never seen. They had exchanged letters through the winter, each one revealing a little more of themselves, building something that felt surprisingly real despite the 1,000 miles between them. Benjamin was 32 years old, broad-shouldered and weathered from years working cattle under the relentless Texas sun. He had built his ranch from nothing, carving out a decent living from land that fought him every step of the way. He was respected in Laredo, known as a fair man who kept his word and worked harder than any 3 men combined. But the ranch house echoed with emptiness at night, and he had finally admitted to himself that he wanted more than just surviving. He wanted a family, a partner, someone to build a real life with. Now Hannah was arriving today on the afternoon train, and this letter that had come ahead of her felt different from all the others. Heavier somehow. Benjamin broke the seal and unfolded the cream-colored paper, and as his eyes moved across the words, his chest tightened with an emotion he could not immediately name. "Dear Benjamin," she had written in that same careful script, "I must tell you something before I arrive, though it would be easier to carry this secret in silence. You have been honest with me in your letters, and I owe you the same courtesy, even if it costs me everything I have dared to hope for these past months. I am with child. The father was a man I believed loved me, a man who promised marriage and then disappeared when I told him the news. I am 4 months along now, and I understand if you no longer wish me to come to Texas. I have enough money set aside to return to Boston on the next train, and I will hold no ill will toward you for changing your mind. But I wanted you to know the truth before we met face to face. Whatever you decide, I thank you for the kindness you have shown me in your letters. They have been a light in a very dark time. Yours in honesty, Hannah." Benjamin read the letter 3 times, standing perfectly still as the morning sun climbed higher and the heat began to build. His foreman, Luis Garcia, rode up to the house with a question about moving the herd to fresh grazing, took one look at Benjamin's face, and quietly rode away again. The smart thing, Benjamin knew, would be to meet Hannah at the train station and send her back east. He barely knew this woman beyond what could be written on paper. Taking on another man's child, raising a baby born from someone else's lies and abandonment that was asking for heartache and complication. The town would talk. People would judge. His life would be harder than it already was. But as Benjamin stood there with that letter in his hand, he found himself thinking about the boy he had been 25 years ago. His own father had died when Benjamin was 7, and his mother had remarried within the year to a man who saw Benjamin as nothing but an extra mouth to feed. He remembered the hunger, not just for food but for any small sign that he mattered, that he was wanted. He remembered being 12 years old and told to leave, to make his own way because there was no room for him anymore. He remembered the cold and the fear and the absolute certainty that he was unwanted in this world. He also remembered the cattle rancher named Tom Murphy, who had found him half-starved on the road outside San Antonio, who had given him work and food and a place to sleep. Tom had taught him everything about ranching, about being a man, about what it meant to show up and do right by people even when it cost you something. Tom was not his blood father, but he had been the only real father Benjamin had ever known. And when Tom died 6 years ago, he had left Benjamin enough money to buy his own land and start his own life. Benjamin folded the letter carefully and put it in his shirt pocket, right over his heart. Then he went inside to clean up and change into his good suit. He had a train to meet. The Lerdo train station was not much to look at, just a covered platform and a small building where tickets were sold and telegrams sent. Benjamin arrived an hour early, too restless to wait at the ranch. He paced the platform, ignoring the curious looks from the handful of other people waiting. His stomach was tied in knots, and he kept reaching up to adjust the string tie at his collar, unused to the restriction of dress clothes. When the train finally appeared on the horizon, a dark shape wavering in the heat shimmer, Benjamin's mouth went dry. He watched it grow larger, heard the screech of brakes and the hiss of steam as it pulled into the station. Passengers began to disembark, dusty travelers stepping down into the Texas heat looking dazed and exhausted. Then he saw her. Hannah Dawson was descending the train steps carefully, one hand holding her skirts and the other gripping a small carpet bag. She was smaller than he had imagined, with auburn hair pinned up beneath a dark blue traveling hat. Her face was pale from the journey, and even from a distance, Benjamin could see the anxiety in her expression as her eyes scanned the platform. Their gazes met, and he saw her freeze. She knew it was him, had to be him, though they had never exchanged photographs. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the 20 feet of dusty platform. Benjamin saw her swallow hard, saw her shoulders straighten as though preparing for a blow. He walked toward her slowly, giving her time to really look at him. When he reached her, he took off his hat and held it in his hands. Up close, she was even prettier than he had imagined, with green eyes that held both intelligence and fear. She was studying his face intently, trying to read his intentions. "Miss Dawson," he said quietly, "I am Benjamin Wallace. Welcome to Lerdo, Mr. Wallace." Her voice was soft but steady, with the refined accent of an educated Eastern woman. "Did you receive my letter?" "I did." The words hung between them. Hannah drew in a breath that shook slightly. "Then I assume you would like me to return to Boston on the next available train. I have funds for the ticket. You need not worry about any obligation." "That is not what I want," Benjamin said, and saw her eyes widen with surprise. He glanced around at the other people on the platform, aware of the attention they were drawing. "This is not the place for this conversation. Would you allow me to take you to get some lunch? The hotel has a decent dining room and we can talk there." Hannah hesitated, then nodded. Benjamin offered his arm, and after a moment's pause, she took it. He could feel her trembling slightly as they walked, though whether from exhaustion, fear, or something else, he could not tell. He collected her trunk from the baggage car and arranged for it to be brought to the hotel, then guided her down the main street of Lerdo. The town was busy with the afternoon activity, riders coming and going, wagons loaded with supplies, the constant background noise of a frontier settlement going about its business. Benjamin was acutely aware of the looks they were getting, the whispers starting already. News traveled fast in a small town, and the arrival of Benjamin Wallace's mail-order bride would be the subject of considerable gossip by nightfall. The hotel dining room was half full, but Benjamin found them a table in the corner where they could have some privacy. Hannah sat down carefully, and he noticed now what he had not seen at first, the slight roundness to her belly that would not be obvious to a casual observer, but was clear enough now that he was looking for it. She caught him looking, and color rose in her cheeks, but she met his gaze directly. not with shame but with a kind of quiet defiance that he found himself respecting. They ordered coffee and food, though Benjamin suspected neither of them was particularly hungry. When the waitress left, an awkward silence settled over the table. Hannah folded her hands in her lap, her posture perfect despite the obvious strain she was under. "You must have questions," she said finally. "I will answer anything you ask." Benjamin turned his coffee cup in slow circles, choosing his words carefully. "The man who fathered your child, was he cruel to you?" "No." Hannah shook her head. "He was charming and attentive and full of promises. I believed him when he said he loved me, when he said we would be married. I was foolish and naive, and I paid the price for that foolishness." "You are not foolish," Benjamin said firmly. "He was a liar and a coward. There is a difference." Something shifted in Hannah's expression, a cautious hope flickering to life. "Most men would not see it that way. Most men are fools." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, gone almost before it appeared. "Why did you ask me to lunch, Mr. Wallace? Why not simply send me away at the station?" Benjamin leaned back in his chair, studying her openly. "Because I have been thinking about what it means to build a life with someone. These past months, your letters have meant a great deal to me. I found myself looking forward to them, thinking about what you had written, wanting to know more about you. The woman I have come to know through those letters is intelligent and brave and honest. Nothing in your last letter changed that." "But the child," Hannah said softly. "Surely you do not want to raise another man's baby. The complications, the talk, the constant reminder of my mistake." "That child did not ask to be born," Benjamin said, his voice rougher than he intended. "And that child deserves to be loved and wanted, regardless of how it came into this world. If you and I are to build a life together, then that child will be part of our family. That child will know my love, same as any child born between us later might." Hannah's eyes filled with tears, and she pressed one hand to her mouth. For a long moment she could not speak. When she finally found her voice, it was barely more than a whisper. "Why would you do this? You do not even know me, not really." "I know enough," Benjamin said. "I know that you wrote to me with honesty even when it would have been easier to lie. I know that you have courage, because coming out here alone took courage. And I know what it feels like to be unwanted, and I will not allow a child to grow up feeling that way if I have the power to prevent it." The food arrived then, giving them both a moment to compose themselves. Hannah wiped her eyes discreetly and took a sip of water. They ate in silence for a while, but it was a different kind of silence now, less strained and more thoughtful. "If we are to do this," Hannah said eventually, "if we are to marry, I need to be clear about something. I will not come to your bed out of obligation. I will not pretend feelings I do not have, and I will not allow myself to be used simply because you are providing for me and my child." "I would not want that," Benjamin said immediately. "I am hoping that in time we might come to care for each other the way a husband and wife should. But I will not force anything, and I will not expect anything you are not willing to give freely." Hannah studied him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "Then I accept your proposal, Mr. Wallace. And I promise to do my best to be a good wife to you." "Benjamin," he said, "if we are to be married, you should call me Benjamin." "Hannah," she replied, and this time when she smiled, it was real. They were married the next morning by the local minister, with Luis Garcia and his wife Maria standing as witnesses. It was a simple ceremony, no flowers or fancy celebration, just the speaking of vows and the signing of papers. Benjamin slipped a plain gold band onto Hannah's finger, one that had belonged to Tom Murphy's wife before she passed. It fit perfectly, and Hannah looked down at it with an expression of wonder, as though she could not quite believe this was real. The ride out to the ranch took an hour, the wagon bouncing over rutted roads while the Texas landscape stretched out endlessly around them. Hannah sat beside Benjamin, her carpetbag at her feet and her trunk tied down in the back. She was quiet, taking in everything with wide eyes, the endless sky, the scattered mesquite trees, the distant shapes of cattle grazing. "It is so open," she said at one point. "I have never seen so much space in my life." "Does it frighten you?" Benjamin asked. "A little," she admitted. "But it is also beautiful in its own way." The ranch house came into view as they crested a rise, a sturdy wooden structure with a wide porch and a red roof. It was not fancy, but it was well built and well maintained, surrounded by outbuildings and corrals. Benjamin felt a surge of pride mixed with nervousness. This was his life he was showing her, everything he had worked for, and he wanted her to like it. He helped her down from the wagon and carried her trunk inside. The house was clean. He had made sure of that, but it was obviously a bachelor's dwelling, sparse and functional with little in the way of comfort or decoration. Hannah walked through slowly, taking in the main room with its stone fireplace, the kitchen area, the 2 bedrooms. "It is not much," Benjamin said, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "But it is solid, and there is room for expansion when we need it." "It is wonderful," Hannah said, and she sounded like she meant it. "I can make curtains for the windows, and perhaps we could get a proper table for the kitchen." "But it is a good house, Benjamin. A strong house." Over the following days, they began the delicate process of learning to live together. Benjamin went about his work on the ranch, rising before dawn to tend the cattle and horses, fixing fences, managing the handful of men he employed. Hannah set about making the house into a home, sewing curtains from fabric she bought in town, organizing the kitchen, planting herbs in a small garden near the back door. They were painfully polite with each other at first, careful not to overstep or presume. Benjamin slept in his room, and Hannah took the smaller bedroom, and they did not speak about the arrangement. They ate meals together, talking about safe topics like the weather and the ranch and Hannah's plans for the garden. They were like 2 strangers sharing a house, circling each other cautiously, not quite sure how to bridge the gap between them. But slowly, gradually, small moments of real connection began to emerge. Benjamin came in one evening to find Hannah struggling to hang a curtain rod, her pregnant belly making it difficult to reach. He took over without comment, holding the rod in place while she marked where the brackets should go. Their hands brushed as she handed him the hammer, and they both froze for a second, aware of the contact, before continuing with the task. Hannah started packing Benjamin lunch to take with him on long days working the range, wrapping biscuits and cold meat in cloth, and adding little extras like dried apples or cookies she had baked. He always thanked her, and she always said it was no trouble, but they both knew it meant something, this small act of caring. One night, about 2 weeks after Hannah's arrival, a terrible thunderstorm rolled in from the Gulf. The wind howled around the house, and lightning split the sky with violent brilliance. Benjamin was reading by lamplight in the main room when he heard a soft knock on Hannah's bedroom door from the inside. Then the door opened, and she appeared in her nightgown, her hair down around her shoulders. "I am sorry," she said, looking embarrassed. "I know this is foolish, but the storms in Boston were never like this. Is it dangerous?" "No," Benjamin said, setting his book aside. "The house has weathered worse, but it can be frightening if you are not used to it. May I sit with you?" Hannah asked hesitantly. "Just until it passes." "Of course." She came and sat in the chair opposite him, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. They did not talk much, but there was comfort in the companionship, in not being alone while the storm raged outside. At one point, a particularly loud crack of thunder made Hannah jump, and Benjamin reached over without thinking and took her hand. She gripped it tightly, and they sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, until the storm finally moved on and the night grew quiet again. "Thank you," Hannah said softly as she stood to return to her room. "Anytime," Benjamin replied and meant it. As May arrived and the weather grew hotter, Hannah's pregnancy became more obvious. Benjamin found himself watching her with growing concern, noticing when she grew tired more quickly, when the heat seemed to bother her, when she pressed a hand to her lower back to ease an ache. He started insisting she rest in the afternoons, taking over tasks she tried to do herself. "I am not made of glass," Hannah protested one day when he took a heavy pot from her hands. "I can still work." "I know you can," Benjamin said, "but you do not have to do everything. Let me help." They were standing close in the kitchen, and Hannah looked up at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You are a good man, Benjamin Wallace," she said quietly. "Better than I deserve to hope for." "You deserve everything good this world can offer," he said, the words coming out rougher than he intended because they were so absolutely true. Somewhere over the past weeks, his feelings for Hannah had deepened from cautious respect into something much stronger. He found himself thinking about her constantly, noticing the way she hummed while she worked, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the sound of her laugh on the rare occasions he managed to amuse her. He was falling in love with his wife, and he had no idea if she felt anything similar for him. The answer came one evening in early June. They had finished supper and were sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. It had been a good day, productive and peaceful, and Benjamin felt more content than he had in years. "Benjamin," Hannah said suddenly, her voice tentative, "may I ask you something? Anything? Why have you not touched me? Beyond holding my hand that night during the storm, you have been so careful to keep distance between us. Is it because of the baby? Because you find me unappealing now that I am obviously with child?" Benjamin turned to look at her, startled. "God, no. Hannah, you are beautiful. More beautiful than I even imagined. I have kept my distance because you asked me to, because you said you would not come to my bed out of obligation." "I did say that," Hannah said slowly, "but what if it is not obligation anymore? What if I find myself wanting to be closer to you, wanting to know what it would be like to be truly your wife?" Benjamin's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "Do you mean that?" Instead of answering with words, Hannah stood and took his hand, drawing him to his feet. She looked up at him with her green eyes full of emotion, vulnerable and hopeful and a little scared. "I did not expect to have feelings for you," she said softly. "I thought this would be a practical arrangement, a way to give my child a name and a home, but you have been so kind, so patient. You have shown me more care in these few weeks than anyone else ever has. And I find myself thinking about you constantly, wanting to be near you, wanting to know what it would be like to have you hold me." Benjamin cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheeks. "I have wanted to hold you for weeks now," he admitted. "I have wanted to kiss you and tell you how much you have come to mean to me, but I was afraid of pushing too fast, of making you feel trapped." "Kiss me then," Hannah whispered. "Please." He kissed her softly at first, tentative and careful, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Hannah made a small sound in the back of her throat and pressed closer, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. The kiss deepened, became something urgent and real, months of careful distance dissolving in the space of a heartbeat. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Benjamin rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "I know it is soon. I know I should not say it yet, but I love you, Hannah. I love your strength and your courage and the way you hum when you cook. I love the way you look at the world with wonder even when you have every reason to be bitter. I love everything about you." Tears were streaming down Hannah's face, but she was smiling. "I love you too," she said, her voice breaking. "I did not think I would ever say those words again, did not think I could trust anyone enough to feel this way. But I love you, Benjamin. You have given me hope when I had none. You have made me believe in goodness again." They held each other on that porch as the stars began to appear overhead, and when they finally went inside, Hannah did not return to her separate bedroom. She went with Benjamin to his room, and he helped her out of her dress with shaking hands, kissing every inch of skin he revealed. He was careful with her, mindful of her condition, but there was nothing tentative about the way they came together. It was passionate and real and absolutely right. Two people who had found each other against all odds, claiming the love they both deserved. Afterwards, lying tangled together in Benjamin's bed, Hannah traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she said. "After everything that happened, I thought I would spend my life in shame, raising my child alone and bitter. But you have given me a family, Benjamin. You have given me love. You have given me the same," he said, pulling her closer. "I was just existing before you came. Now I am truly living." The months that followed were the happiest of Benjamin's life. He and Hannah grew closer with each passing day, learning each other's rhythms and habits, building the kind of partnership that made everything easier and better. Hannah's belly grew round and full as the baby inside her developed, and Benjamin found himself fascinated by the changes in her body, the way the child moved beneath her skin, the glow that seemed to emanate from her. They talked about the baby often, making plans for the future. Benjamin built a cradle from oak wood, spending his evenings in the barn sanding and polishing until it was smooth as silk. Hannah sewed tiny clothes and blankets, preparing for the arrival with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "What if I am not a good mother?" she asked one night as they lay in bed, her head resting on Benjamin's shoulder. "What if I do not know what to do?" "You will be an excellent mother," Benjamin said with absolute certainty. "And you will not be alone. We will figure it out together." "You really see this child as yours," Hannah said, not quite a question but not quite a statement either. "I do," Benjamin said firmly. "That baby is part of you and you are part of me now. That makes the child mine in every way that matters." As summer turned to fall, practical concerns began to arise. Hannah needed a doctor, but the closest physician was in Laredo, an hour's wagon ride over rough roads. Benjamin made arrangements with Dr. Samuel Hughes, an older man with a brisk manner but kind eyes, who agreed to come out to the ranch when Hannah's time came. "First babies can be unpredictable," Dr. Hughes told them during one of Hannah's check-ups in town. "Could come early, could come late, but everything looks healthy so far. You are doing well, Mrs. Wallace." Hannah was 7 months along now, moving more slowly but still insisting on doing her share of the work around the house. Benjamin had hired Maria Garcia to come help a few days a week, giving Hannah someone to talk to and taking some of the burden off her. The two women became fast friends, Maria sharing stories of her own 4 children and offering advice about everything from swollen ankles to preparing for labor. "Your husband, he is a good man," Maria told Hannah one afternoon while they were preserving vegetables from the garden. "My Louis, he says Benjamin Wallace is the most decent rancher he has ever worked for. Fair pay, treats everyone with respect. You are lucky to have found him." "I know," Hannah said softly. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that I have him and this home and a future worth looking forward to." "You deserve it," Maria said firmly. "Whatever happened before, you deserve happiness." In October, A telegram arrived from Boston that sent Hannah into a spiral of anxiety. Her father had died, the message said, and her mother wanted her to come home for the funeral. Hannah showed Benjamin the telegram with shaking hands, her face pale. "I should go," she said. "He was my father, despite everything. But I cannot travel now, not this close to my time, and even if I could, I do not think I could face my mother. She told me never to contact the family again after I told her about the baby. She said I was a disgrace." Benjamin took the telegram and set it aside, then pulled Hannah into his arms. "Then you do not go," he said simply. "You do not owe anyone your presence or your pain, especially people who cast you out when you needed them most. We will send a condolence note if you wish, but that is all." "You do not think I am being heartless?" Hannah asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "I think you are protecting yourself and your child," Benjamin said. "There is nothing heartless about that." They sent a brief note expressing sympathy, and Hannah mourned in her own way, quietly and privately. Benjamin noticed she was more emotional in the days that followed, crying at small things, clinging to him at night. He held her and let her grieve, understanding that it was not just her father she was mourning but the family and life she had left behind, the girl she used to be before everything changed. As November arrived and Hannah entered her 9th month, everyone on the ranch was on high alert. Benjamin stuck close to the house, refusing to ride out with the men to the far pastures. He kept a horse saddled at all times, ready to ride to Laredo for the doctor at a moment's notice. The moment came on a cold morning in mid-November. Benjamin was in the barn feeding the horses when he heard Hannah call his name. There was something in her voice that sent him running. He found her in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the table, water pooling on the floor beneath her skirts. "The baby is coming," she said, trying to sound calm but unable to hide the fear in her eyes. "My water just broke." Benjamin's heart leaped into his throat, but he forced himself to stay calm. "All right, let me get you to bed and then I will ride for the doctor." He helped Hannah to their bedroom, settling her as comfortably as possible. She was already having contractions. He could see her face tighten with pain every few minutes. He hated to leave her, but they needed the doctor. "I will be as fast as I can," he promised, kissing her forehead. "Maria is coming today. She should be here within the hour. You will not be alone for long." "Hurry," Hannah said, gripping his hand as another contraction hit. Benjamin rode harder than he ever had in his life, pushing his horse to its limits on the road to Laredo. He found Dr. Hughes at his office, and barely gave him time to grab his bag before they were racing back to the ranch. The ride back felt like it took forever, every minute an eternity while Benjamin imagined all the things that could go wrong. When they finally reached the ranch house, Maria was already there, and Benjamin could hear Hannah crying out from the bedroom. He started to follow the doctor inside, but Maria intercepted him. "You wait out here," she said firmly. "This is women's work. We will call you when it is time." It was the longest afternoon of Benjamin's life. He paced the main room like a caged animal, jumping every time Hannah cried out, wanting desperately to be with her, but knowing he would only be in the way. Lewis came by at some point and sat with him, offering silent support that Benjamin was grateful for even though he could barely focus on anything beyond what was happening in that bedroom. Hours passed. The sun began to set, painting the sky red and gold. Benjamin was standing at the window, watching darkness fall when he heard it, the thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. His legs nearly gave out. He gripped the windowsill hard, his eyes stinging with tears, waiting for someone to tell him if Hannah was all right, if the baby was healthy, if everything had gone well. The bedroom door opened and Dr. Hughes emerged, wiping his hands on a cloth. He looked tired but was smiling. "Congratulations, Mr. Wallace. You have a son. And your wife did beautifully. She is exhausted but healthy." "Can I see them?" Benjamin asked, his voice rough. "Give Maria a few more minutes to get them settled, then yes." Those few minutes felt longer than all the hours before, but finally, Maria appeared in the doorway and beckoned him in. Benjamin walked into the bedroom on unsteady legs. Hannah was propped up in bed, her hair damp with sweat, her face exhausted but radiantly happy. And in her arms, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, was a tiny baby with a shock of dark hair. "Benjamin," Hannah said softly, and her smile was like the sun coming out after a storm. "Come meet your son." He crossed the room slowly, feeling like he was in a dream. When he reached the bed, Hannah carefully transferred the baby into his arms, and Benjamin looked down at the impossibly small person he was holding. The baby's eyes were closed, his face red and wrinkled, one tiny fist waving in the air. He was perfect. "He is beautiful," Benjamin said, his voice breaking. "He is perfect, Hannah." "Would you like to name him?" Hannah asked. "I know traditionally the father chooses the name for a son." Benjamin looked at her, then back down at the baby in his arms. He thought about Tom Murphy, the man who had saved him, who had given him a chance at life. "Henry," he said. "Henry Thomas Wallace, if that is all right with you." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "It is perfect." Benjamin sat on the edge of the bed, unable to take his eyes off his son. His son. It did not matter that he had not fathered this child. In every way that counted, Henry was his. And as he had promised months ago, this child would know his love. The first weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Henry was a good baby overall, but he woke frequently to nurse, and Hannah was running on very little sleep. Benjamin helped as much as he could, changing diapers and walking the floor with Henry when he was fussy, taking him so Hannah could rest during the day. "I could not do this without you," Hannah told him one night as they sat together in the rocking chair Benjamin had brought into the bedroom, Henry nursing contentedly at her breast. "I watch you with him, and I fall in love with you all over again." "He is easy to love," Benjamin said, running a gentle finger over Henry's downy head, "just like his mother." As winter settled over South Texas, the Wallace family found their rhythm. Benjamin managed the ranch with his usual efficiency, but his priorities had shifted. He still worked hard, but he made sure to be present for meals, to spend time with Hannah and Henry, to not miss the small moments that made life worth living. Henry grew quickly, changing almost daily. His eyes turned from dark blue to a warm brown, and he started smiling at around 6 weeks, a gummy grin that made both Benjamin and Hannah melt. Benjamin found himself doing ridiculous things to earn that smile, making funny faces and singing off key songs. "You are going to spoil him terribly," Hannah said, laughing as Benjamin carried Henry around the house, pointing out everything and explaining the purpose of various objects to a baby too young to understand. "That is my right as his father," Benjamin said with mock seriousness. "Spoiling him is practically my duty." As spring arrived and Henry approached 6 months old, Hannah broached a subject they had not discussed in a while. They were sitting on the porch one evening, watching Henry play with his toes on a blanket spread at their feet. "Benjamin," she said carefully, "would you want to have another child, one that is biologically yours?" Benjamin looked at her in surprise. "Henry is mine." "I know," Hannah said quickly. "I did not mean it that way. I just meant, would you want to have more children, to expand our family? Is that what you want?" Benjamin asked, taking her hand. "I think so," Hannah said. "I love Henry so much, more than I ever imagined possible, and I love our life together. I would like to have another baby if you would, but only if that is what you want too." Benjamin pulled her close and kissed her softly. "I would love to have another child with you," he said. and another one after that if we are blessed. But Hannah, I need you to understand something. Henry is not less mine because I did not father him. Any children we have in the future will not be more mine than he is. They will all be ours, all equal in my heart. I know, Hannah said, tears shining in her eyes. That is why I love you so much. That is why I want to build this family with you. Their second son was born in February of 1880, 18 months after Henry. They named him William James Wallace, and he looked nothing like his brother. Where Henry had dark hair and brown eyes, William was fair with blue eyes and a tendency toward blonde curls. The differences in their appearance made it obvious they had different fathers, but Benjamin never cared and never treated them differently. Henry, now a toddler, was fascinated by his baby brother. He would pat William's head gently and bring him toys, chattering away in the nonsensical language of small children. Benjamin and Hannah would watch them together and feel their hearts swell with love and gratitude. The ranch continued to prosper. Benjamin expanded his herd and hired more men, building a reputation as one of the most successful ranchers in the Lerdo area. Hannah became involved in the community, making friends with other ranch wives and helping to establish a small school in town. Their home was always full of warmth and laughter, and neighbors remarked on how happy the Wallace family seemed. When Henry was 4 and William was 2, a man showed up at the ranch asking for Hannah. Benjamin was out with the cattle, but Maria was at the house helping with the boys, and she immediately sent one of the ranch hands to fetch Benjamin while keeping the stranger away from Hannah and the children. By the time Benjamin got back to the house, his heart pounding with concern, he found Hannah standing on the porch with her arms crossed, facing a well-dressed man in his 30s who looked both uncomfortable and angry. "What is going on?" Benjamin asked, dismounting quickly and striding to Hannah's side. "This is Richard Thornton," Hannah said, her voice cold. "Henry's biological father." Benjamin felt rage surge through him, hot and immediate. He stepped slightly in front of Hannah, facing the man who had abandoned her. "You need to leave. Now." "I came to see my son," Richard said, trying for an authoritative tone that fell flat. "I heard that Hannah had a boy, and I have a right to know him." "You have no rights here," Benjamin said, his voice deadly quiet. "You gave up any claim to that child when you left Hannah alone and pregnant. You do not get to show up years later and call yourself his father." "I am his father," Richard insisted. "Biologically, he is mine, and I have means now. I can provide for him, give him opportunities you never could. I want to take him back east, give him a proper education. You want to take him." Hannah's voice was shaking with fury. "You want to steal my son away from his family, from the only father he has ever known. Get off our property right now, or I will have my husband throw you off." "Hannah, be reasonable," Richard said, and the condescending tone was apparently the last straw for Benjamin. He closed the distance between them in 2 long strides and grabbed Richard by the front of his expensive coat. "That child does not know you. He does not want to know you. He has a father, and it is me. I am the one who held Hannah's hand while she gave birth. I am the one who walked the floor with him all night when he was colicky. I am the one who taught him to walk and comforted him when he had nightmares. You are nothing to him, and you have no power here." Richard paled, apparently realizing he had miscalculated badly. "I could take this to court. I could fight for custody." "Try it," Benjamin said, releasing him with a slight shove. "Try to explain to a judge why you think you have any right to a child you have never met, a child whose mother you abandoned. Try to explain why the courts should take a 4-year-old away from the only home he has ever known. See how far that gets you." Richard looked between Benjamin and Hannah, seeming to finally understand that he was not going to get what he wanted. "You have not heard the last of this," he said, but the threat was hollow and they all knew it. "Yes, we have," Hannah said firmly. "Because if you come near my family again, I will make sure everyone in Texas knows what kind of man you are. I still have your letters, Richard. The ones where you promised marriage and spoke of your undying love. I am sure your wife would find them very interesting." Richard went white. "How did you know I was married?" "I know a lot of things," Hannah said coldly. "Now get off our property and do not ever come back." They watched Richard ride away, and only when he was out of sight did Hannah start to shake. Benjamin pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "He cannot take Henry," she said, her voice breaking. "He cannot. Benjamin, what if he tries? What if he has money and connections and he finds a way?" "He will not," Benjamin said firmly. "I promise you, Hannah, I will not let anyone take our son. Not now, not ever." That evening, after the boys were asleep, Benjamin and Hannah sat down at the kitchen table and wrote out a complete account of everything that had happened, including copies of Richard's letters that Hannah had kept. They took it all to the lawyer in Laredo the next day and made sure that legal protections were in place. Benjamin formally adopted Henry, making it official in the eyes of the law that he was the boy's father in every sense of the word. Richard never came back. They heard through various sources that he had returned to Boston shortly after the confrontation, and they never heard from him again. The incident left Hannah shaken for a while, but gradually the fear faded, replaced by a renewed appreciation for the life they had built. As the years passed, the Wallace family continued to grow and thrive. Hannah gave birth to a daughter in 1882, a little girl they named Roseanne, who had her mother's auburn hair and green eyes. Henry and William adored their baby sister, competing to see who could make her laugh the hardest. The ranch expanded until Benjamin owned one of the largest spreads in South Texas. He was respected throughout the region, known for his fairness and his integrity. Hannah became a pillar of the community, helping to establish a church in Laredo and running a small lending library from their home. But more than any external success, what mattered most was the love that filled their home. Henry grew into a thoughtful, kind boy who loved books and learning. William was more adventurous, always climbing trees and getting into harmless mischief. Rose was spirited and bright, asking questions about everything and keeping her parents on their toes. Benjamin treated all three children with equal love and devotion. He taught the boys to ride and rope, took Rose on walks to collect wildflowers, read stories to all of them before bed. He was present and involved, the kind of father he had always wished he had. One evening in the spring of 1885, when Henry was 7, he climbed into Benjamin's lap after supper and said, "Papa, Tommy Anderson at school said that you are not my real father. He said his pa told him that some other man fathered me. Is that true?" Benjamin felt Hannah tense across the room, but he kept his voice calm and steady. "Come here, Hannah. This is something we should talk about together." They sat down with Henry on the porch, the other children already in bed. Benjamin held his son's hand and chose his words carefully. "When you were born," he said, "your mama was not married to me yet. There was another man who fathered you, that part is true. But here is what else is true. I chose you, Henry. I chose to be your father before you were even born. I chose to love you and raise you and be there for every moment of your life. Biology does not make a man a father. Love does. Showing up every day does. And I have loved you and shown up for you every single day of your life. So yes, I am your real father. The only father you have ever had or will ever need." Henry was quiet for a moment, processing this. "Does that mean you love William more than me, because he is your biological son?" "No," Benjamin said firmly, pulling Henry close. "I love you all exactly the same. You are all my children, all equally precious to me. The only difference between you and William is that I got to love you a little bit longer since you were here first. I am glad you are my papa, Henry said softly. I do not want any other father. Good, Benjamin said, his voice thick with emotion, because I do not want any other son. You are stuck with me. Hannah was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Henry noticed and reached out to her. Do not cry, Mama, I am happy. I know, sweetheart, Hannah said, pulling him into a hug. These are happy tears. I am just so grateful for our family. As Henry grew older, he never questioned his place in the family again. He knew he was loved, knew he belonged, and that was all that mattered. The story of his birth became just that. A story, a part of the family history that did not define him or change his identity as a Wallace. Over the years, Benjamin and Hannah would have 2 more children, another boy and another girl, giving them 5 children in total. The ranch house was expanded to accommodate their growing family, adding bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The sounds of children laughing and playing filled the air, and neighbors would comment on what a beautiful family the Wallaces had, how happy and well-adjusted all the children seemed. Benjamin never regretted his decision to marry Hannah and raise Henry as his own. In fact, it was one of the choices he was most proud of. That single act of choosing love over fear, acceptance over judgment, had given him everything he held most dear. A wife he adored, children who filled his life with joy, and a sense of purpose that went beyond just building a successful ranch. Hannah would sometimes watch Benjamin with the children, seeing him patiently teach Henry to read a difficult passage, or help William master a new skill with the lasso, or dance around the kitchen with Rose and the younger children. In those moments, her heart would overflow with love for this man who had taken a chance on her, when she had nothing to offer but honesty and hope. One evening in the fall of 1890, after all the children were finally asleep, Benjamin and Hannah sat together on the porch as they had so many times before. Henry was 12 now, a tall boy on the cusp of becoming a young man. William was 10, Rose was 8, and the youngest 2 were 6 and 4. The ranch was thriving, the children were healthy and happy, and life was good. You ever regret it? Hannah asked softly, taking Benjamin's hand. Taking on another man's child, dealing with all the complications that came with it. Benjamin turned to look at her, his weathered face creasing into a smile. Not for a single second. Hannah, you and the children are the best thing that ever happened to me. I was just a lonely rancher before you came. Now I have a life full of love and meaning. How could I ever regret that? I love you so much, Hannah said, leaning her head on his shoulder. More than I ever thought possible. You have given me and Henry a life I never dared to dream of. You gave me the same, Benjamin said, kissing the top of her head. We gave each other a second chance, and we built something beautiful from it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the vast Texas sky. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and wanted. The ranch stretched out around them, the result of years of hard work and dedication. And between them was a love that had started as a leap of faith and grown into something unshakable. As the years continued to pass, the Wallace family remained close-knit and loving. Henry eventually went to college in Austin, studying law and making his parents incredibly proud. He would return to Laredo to practice, helping families in the area with legal matters and never forgetting where he came from. He married a local girl named Catherine, and they gave Benjamin and Hannah their first grandchildren. William chose to stay on the ranch, working alongside his father and eventually taking over much of the day-to-day management. He had a gift with horses and cattle, a natural understanding of the land that made him an excellent rancher. He married Maria and Louis's daughter Elena, further strengthening the bonds between the families. Rose became a teacher, fulfilling her mother's dream of bringing education to the frontier. She taught in the school that Hannah had helped establish years before, inspiring a new generation of children. She married a young doctor who had come to Lerdo to open a practice, and they built a life dedicated to serving their community. The younger children found their own paths as well, one becoming a banker in San Antonio, and the other marrying a rancher from a neighboring spread. All of them remained close to their parents, coming home for holidays and gatherings, filling the ranch house with noise and laughter and the next generation of Wallace children. Through it all, Benjamin and Hannah's love remained the foundation that everything else was built on. They grew old together, weathering the challenges and celebrating the joys, never taking for granted the gift they had been given when a pregnant woman stepped off a train in Lerdo, and a lonely cowboy decided that love was more important than pride. In the spring of 1910, on their 32nd wedding anniversary, Benjamin and Hannah sat once again on the porch of their ranch house. They were in their 60s now, their hair gray and their bodies marked by the passage of time. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young people who had taken a chance on each other all those years ago. "You remember the day we met?" Hannah asked, holding Benjamin's weathered hand in hers. "How terrified I was that you would send me away. I remember thinking that you were the bravest person I had ever met," Benjamin said. "Coming all this way, carrying such a burden but still willing to hope for something better." "You gave me that something better," Hannah said softly. "You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Benjamin corrected gently. "That has always been the truth of us." They sat together as the sun set over the Texas landscape, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and red. Around them was the life they had built together. The ranch that had grown and prospered, the house that had sheltered their family, the land that had witnessed their love story unfold. Inside, several of their grandchildren were staying for the weekend, their voices audible through the open windows as they played and laughed. In a few minutes, Hannah would go in to start supper, and Benjamin would help, and they would all sit around the big table together like they had done thousands of times before. But for this moment, it was just the two of them, the mail-order bride and the cowboy who had said that her child would know his love. That promise, made 32 years ago, had become the foundation of a family, a legacy of love that would continue for generations to come. Henry, now a respected lawyer with children of his own, had once told Benjamin that he considered himself the luckiest man alive to have been born into such love. He said he never felt different from his siblings, never felt like he was less valued or less wanted. He said that Benjamin had shown him what it truly meant to be a father, and he tried every day to live up to that example with his own children. Those words had meant more to Benjamin than any success or achievement. They were proof that love, real love, transcended biology and circumstances. They were proof that the choice he had made on that train platform in 1878 had been the right one, the best one, the one that had given him a life worth living. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Benjamin squeezed Hannah's hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Hannah asked, though she was smiling because she knew. "For getting off that train, for trusting me, for building this life with me, for loving me. Thank you for seeing me when I was at my lowest and choosing to love me anyway," Hannah replied. "Thank you for keeping your promise about Henry. Thank you for being the man I always hoped existed, but never thought I would find." They kissed then, a soft press of lips that held 32 years of love and partnership and unwavering devotion. And when they finally went inside to join their grandchildren for supper, their hands were still clasped together, just as they had been through every joy and challenge their life together had brought. The story of Benjamin and Hannah Wallace became something of a legend in Laredo. People would speak of the cowboy who had married a pregnant mail-order bride and raised her child as his own, never once treating the boy differently than his other children. They spoke of a love that had overcome judgment and hardship to build something lasting and beautiful. But to Benjamin and Hannah, it was never a story or a legend. It was simply their life, the one they had chosen together, the one they had fought for and cherished every single day. It was waking up next to each other for over 3 decades, working side by side to build a home and a family, supporting each other through loss and celebrating together in triumph. It was Benjamin keeping his promise that Henry would know his love, not just in words but in actions, every single day of that boy's life. It was Hannah learning to trust again, to open her heart to love after it had been broken, and finding that the risk was worth taking. It was both of them choosing, over and over again, to put their family first, to lead with love instead of fear, to build a legacy that would outlast them both. As the years continued to pass and Benjamin and Hannah grew older still, they never lost sight of how lucky they were. They had found each other against all odds, had built something beautiful from broken pieces, had created a family that was bound not just by blood but by choice and commitment and unwavering love. When Benjamin passed away in the winter of 1918 at the age of 72, he was surrounded by his wife, his 5 children, and more grandchildren than he could count. His last words were to Hannah, and he told her the same thing he had told her countless times over their 40 years of marriage. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Hannah lived another 5 years, passing peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1923. She was buried next to Benjamin on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, under a sky that stretched endlessly above the Texas plains. At her funeral, Henry, now a distinguished lawyer in his mid-40s, gave a eulogy that had everyone in attendance in tears. He spoke of his mother's courage and his father's boundless capacity for love. He spoke of growing up never doubting for a single moment that he was wanted and cherished. He spoke of the legacy his parents had left, not in land or money, but in the example they set of what real love looked like. "My father once told me that biology does not make a family," Henry said, his voice strong despite his grief. "He said that love makes a family, and showing up every day makes a family. My parents showed up for each other and for all of us, every single day of their lives. They taught us that love is a choice you make over and over, in big moments and small ones. They taught us that family is what you build, not just what you are born into. And they taught us that there is no force more powerful in this world than 2 people who choose to love each other, completely and without reservation." The Wallace Ranch continued to thrive under William's management, and then under his children's management after him. The family stayed close, bound by the legacy Benjamin and Hannah had created. Every generation knew the story of how their family began, with a pregnant woman stepping off a train and a cowboy who said that her child would know his love. And every generation understood that the true lesson of that story was not about sacrifice or duty, but about the transformative power of love freely given. Benjamin had not taken on Hannah and Henry out of obligation or pity. He had done it because his heart recognized something in them, some essential rightness that made them his family even before any legal or biological ties existed. That recognition, that choice to love, had created a legacy that would last far beyond the lives of the 2 people who started it. It had created a family bound not by blood alone, but by the understanding that love is always, always a choice worth making. The ranch house that Benjamin built and expanded over the years still stands today, owned by his descendants, filled with the echoes of laughter and love that have resonated through its walls for over a century. And on that hill overlooking the ranch, two headstones stand side by side, marking the resting place of Benjamin Wallace and Hannah Wallace. The inscription on Benjamin's stone, chosen by Hannah before her own death, reads simply, "He loved without condition and gave without reservation. He was husband, father, and the finest man I ever knew." Hannah's stone, inscribed by her children, says, "She taught us courage, she showed us grace, she gave us the gift of her love and our fathers, she was the heart of our family." Between the two stones, a single phrase is carved into a smaller marker, placed there by Henry on the anniversary of his father's death. "That child will know my love," and he did, always. It is a testament to a promise kept, a life well lived, and a love that transcended circumstances to create something beautiful and enduring. It is the story of Benjamin and Hannah Wallace, two people who found each other when they needed it most, who chose love over fear, and who built a legacy that would last for generations. Their story reminds us that family is not always defined by blood, that love is not diminished by hardship, and that the most powerful thing we can do in this life is to open our hearts to someone who needs us, to make a promise to love, and to keep that promise every single day, no matter what challenges may come. Benjamin and Hannah's love story did not end with their deaths. It lives on in every member of their family, in every act of kindness and acceptance, in every choice to love without reservation. It lives on in the lessons they taught and the example they set, proving that the greatest legacy we can leave is not wealth or property, but the love we give and the families we build through that love. And so their story continues, passed down through generations, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with a simple choice to see someone, to really see them in all their vulnerability and humanity, and to say, "Yes, you belong here, you are wanted, you are loved." That is what Benjamin said to Hannah and Henry on that train platform in Laredo in 1878. And that is what they spent the rest of their lives proving, day after day, year after year, until their love became not just a story but a foundation, not just a feeling but a legacy that would outlast them both and touch countless lives for generations to come.